I'm good.
Hey, my name is Philly Cruz. Welcome to Cruising with Phil. I got a special guest here. I met this gentleman at the Pride Church Day, Pride Day down on Church Street. Mr. Stephen Archambault. Did I say it right?
Yeah, it's very close. Good
Okay.
enough.
How you doing, Stephen? Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Phil. I appreciate it. It's a different format than when we first met, but this is good because it allows us to communicate across the country.
That's great. Well, I've heard of Stonewall. That's when I was surprised when I saw your tent down on Church Street on Pride Day, Pride Parade Day. I was like, that's great. I knew about it because some of your people are asking, have I heard? I said, yeah, I've heard of Stonewall Recovery for a while back, but a lot of people don't know about that. I've asked a couple of people. So just introduce yourself, Stephen, and tell you what you're all about.
Well, my name's Stephen Archambault. I am the co-founder for Stonewall Recovery, which is you can see on the screen, Canada's first 2S LGBTQ addiction treatment facility. Our goal is to be able to support people in bed treatment with an actual space for them to have a bed in the next 2 years. We are fully self-supporting. We are working hard at getting grants and other support, but right now all of our funding and everything is coming through personal donation and corporate. So whatever we're doing right now it's been very rewarding, but there's been a lot of taxing on the group that's been putting it together, just because it's always a constant push to get support financially.
I see you got quite a list of the don't can't say the word now. Donation stuff from different companies. You got TD Banks involved too, right?
Yeah, TD's been involved. ATB Financial out here
That's
in the
great.
West has been involved. We have a lot of different groups. We're talking with other organizations all the time to get their support and bring them on board as to show that the benefit of dealing with addiction recovery, not just within the queer community primarily, because that's who our client base is, but in general, it's just expanding that knowledge. Like there's organizations out there that don't donate into the field of addiction recovery. So when they sit down and see the return on investment, um, it's quite high for considering what brings back to the Canadian economy when we work with people who have struggled with addiction recovery.
Well, let's go before you back and talk about the Stonewall. Just want to talk about yourself. Can you tell about your background and how you got involved with this?
Oh, it's a long and sordid story there,
You got
Phil.
half an hour. Go ahead.
Yeah. Um, pardon me, sorry. I am an ex-military. I served the Canadian Armed Forces.
Same as here, right?
I'm
Same.
old. I'm old, so I won't tell the dates of everything. But I spent 5 years in well, just almost 5 years in the Canadian Armed Forces. I was honorably discharged. And then I went into corporate life and somehow moved from being an infantier into banking. And about 10 years ago, I was the vice president of Western Canada for a Schedule One bank. And I woke up one morning and was like, I don't like who's looking back in the mirror. And I didn't like the fact that I always felt like I was taking and I wasn't giving. And so I turned my life upside down. I quit. I took a 10-month sabbatical, forced due to mental health as well, to really focus on who I was, who I wanted to be, and did some really deep therapeutic work to deal with the PTSD as well as other issues that I was having. And when I was done, I was like, I found my calling back into the area that um, the not-for-profit world, which I found really rewarding. So I went into addiction recovery, where I have 23 years currently. I have 23 years of my own recovery.
Wow. Great.
And um, in that time I was working in the field, I saw so many people from our community being, even through passive violence or where somebody would say something, they would use a derogatory term or something else, and it would cost somebody from our community their recovery. They would get afraid, they would be worried, or they would stand up for themselves or call somebody out. And if some sort of interaction occurred, both people would end up being, kind of released from the recovery space. So I worked really hard at creating a new program and new ideas, and um, I bringing in some new psychological ideas for it. With meaning, the fact is I spent a year working in a psychology firm that dealt with children, and they have some really amazing things through play therapy that kind of work that actually will have an application within Stonewall within the recovery space. Um, not because it's like I'm saying that people are children, but it brings us back to who we are at our basics.
Our
Uh,
innocence, right? Yeah.
yeah, and working through that trauma in a different manner that is safe and truthfully, honestly, it can be considered fun at different times. But you know, you got doing sandbox or anything else. There's so many different aspects with the world of psychology. And instead of just saying it's this small sliver that we're going to work with, the people who come into Stonewall get to choose the type of psychology we're going to do with. We're going to have psychologists on retainer so that they can pick that space, and then the psychologist, the client, recovery coach, you'll say, and the counselor that works there, will have three people working to the good of the client, sharing information and pushing that client forward. And nobody can, everybody's going to be working to the same end, which is what the client decided on their journey was going to look like from the beginning. So everybody
Great.
that they're working with is people they selected.
Great. You said you've been 23 years recovery, you said?
Yeah, I do. I'm 23
So,
years. My primary addiction was a process addiction. So yeah, my primary addiction was gambling, and I've quit smoking in my life. I have worked on the codependency issue, which in my personal belief, the first addiction for all of us was codependency in its form, not necessarily like people get a little bit worried about when you start saying, well, the first addiction was codependency. But for me and everybody else for a lot of other people I see, the codependency, you see people coming into treatment and their life is in shambles. They've got, everything is kind of falling down around them. They might have legal issues, all these other stuff that's coming in at them. And, they get 7 days clean. And the first thing they do is they get on, a dating app, or they get on something else to start to fill a void that they need to be filling themselves.
yeah.
So codependency is one of the areas. So that's one of the areas that I've done a lot of self work in.
I got a couple of friends in the recovery, different scenarios, and what, like you said, they say the same thing. It's always up and down, right? It's always you have your good days, you have your bad days, right?
Oh gosh, yes. But isn't that life, Phil? Like, isn't that the space of
Oh yeah, because we put on
you
the
know,
facade of the media and stuff of the perfection, the perfect audition and all that. And we were afraid to be criticized, or if we get put down, we feel less of a person, or you have this peer pressure on, which is unnecessary, you know?
right. So it's that's that space, right? Is when we're working with different spaces, and for my even my own journey, I mean, we have to come to realization that, everybody, a lot of people that I want to be happy. And I'm like, well, what does happy look like? What's the definition of happy? And it's like, yeah, you have ups and you have downs, and those are beautiful together. When they're like, "Oh, I want to be happy," I'm like, well, you were happy 5 minutes ago. How much does happiness mean? Like, what's the extent of it? And then when they accept, or when I accepted the fact that it was this beautiful journey of up and down, and then the down was there to teach, the downsides were there to teach me of the areas that I had to look at. It was just, it started to open up a whole new bunch of doors, and we bring that into Stonewall as well.
I think it also gives you, in a way, gives you more advantage helping people out with your background because you've been through the experiences, right? So that being kind of hands-on in that kind of scenarios, you've been there, you've done that, you experience it. So your situations help others in the future, right? And right now.
Absolutely. And I mean, there is one side to it, and I don't live life experience within the world of addiction and the recovery space is massive. Um, pardon me, sorry. It's a really important part of it. But there are a lot of people who work in this field who haven't experienced addiction in the same way that are doing great work. Um, it is part of, a medical space that there is. So if somebody, you don't go to a cancer doctor or somebody who's going to help you be therapeutic and say, well, they can't help you if they didn't have cancer.
No.
So addiction is something that is really an amazing space of live life experience can come in and be a part of it. Um, but I don't want to discount those amazing people that are in this field that are doing great work that have never experienced a drug or alcohol or a food addiction or anything else in that space. Um, so that I just like I see some of the work they're doing and the compassion and passion that they bring to this industry, this space, and it's like it's amazing. Sorry, my corporate brain clicked back on, and I almost called it an industry,
Sorry.
but it's that space, but that's that whole thing. So I don't want people to think that the only person can help them is the person who's been there,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
teaming up with people because some of the psychologists that we do use haven't had addiction issues, and they're amazing people. So.
How do you like these psychologists? How do you find them? Like, do
uh,
they reach out to you or what?
So I've had the pleasure of working in this field for 10 years. I've met some really amazing people. When I meet them, I'm like, hey, do you want to do this for us? Do you want to be a part of this? When we're ready, we can, because I want them to be able to make an income as well. I don't want it to be for free or anything
Yeah.
else. And since starting Stonewall, you wouldn't believe the list of people that have reached out. So when they reach out, it's like we meet with them, we talk, we make sure that we're on the same value system. And yeah, so I've got, between people reaching out and people that I've met that are amazing, like when we're up and running and we have the embed with space going, we'll have, people from the social work field, from the psychology field. And the way we have it set up, we're virtual as well. So anybody can take part right from coast to coast. When we're up and running and fully operational, no matter if we're running our day program, and then we'll work with them to find people in their area. So we'll help them find people in their area that will be supportive as well.
So how'd you find Stonewall? Did was that your first choice?
Uh, that's one of the biggest questions that I look at, especially within our community. Um, when my co-founder, Brittany Sawyer is my co-founder. Brittany is currently working to finish her psychology work. She's doing her in Alberta, the EPPP, and getting that all done, getting her hours done. So she's doing a lot of work towards that, and as we build this. But when Brittany and I first started looking at everything, the the stats that we started seeing about addiction within the queer community, about death within the queer community, if stats fall true, like 30% here, 10% here, um, was staggering in the amount of people that we lose every year in this country from our community to addiction. The numbers rival, or if not worse, from addiction than the HIV/AIDS epidemic. So this was a really big, heavy lift. And when we sat down, we wanted to pick a name that could handle that burden, that space, that had the broadness and the strength to handle what we were going to be doing. And for us, there was no other name other than Stonewall.
Okay. So
Um, it it represented so many things to both of us, um, in that space. It represented, strength, and it represented fighting, and it represented, standing up for your fellow person, like standing up. It represented this resiliency to us, um, and we couldn't think of any other name that would carry the weight of what we are going to be taking on, um, and 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 be that beacon as well to
who,
bring
who
people to that space.
who came up with the logo behind you there?
This was an amazing. We have done with some amazing volunteers. It was come up by a university marketing student. We had a couple of different ones, and we wanted to kind of bring into that space that. So they brought this one back, and everybody selected. So if you look, there's like just the
Five. So they represent
So
something in particular, each one?
no, they don't. They were just something that we wanted to bring forward. Unfortunately, part of our thought pattern, which is why we need Stonewall, part of our thought pattern was not to be over the top with the rainbow and use the rainbow in a way because
Mhm.
in that space, we didn't want to be have targets put on the
Oh, because
building
yeah,
or us, right?
I like I like the yellow you have in the middle. When I saw
Yep.
the first time, I said to myself, "Hey, it's yellow, pure within, going out." That's what I
Yeah.
thought.
It
That's
is.
so
Yeah,
cool.
it's on my shirt too. So I mean,
Yeah, I love
I
that. Yeah,
represent everywhere I go, trying to, and
we
but
met
yeah.
we
So
met at the the first time we had a booth at the Pride Parade at it's first time, right?
yeah, we said it was funny. It was we um had an amazing donor who felt that we needed to get our word out there even further. If it
Oh, were
was
you
Fred,
thinking about going to Toronto before that, before the donor came through?
well, I my family's originally from Ontario, so I'm
Hmm.
always thinking about going back home
Yeah,
because um we have a really strong and beautiful family. So I'm always thinking about going home, and I still call Ontario home, even I've been out in Alberta since 1990. But Toronto Pride wasn't on our list until somebody said, you need to get out, you need to be a part of, and you need to, get the message of what you're trying to do to other provinces because um, with your goal being to be national and support nationally, you're gonna have to show up nationally. And so they donated our flights and they
wow, that's
donated
great. That's
so our
amazing.
flights and we did stay at the university there in the campus, so keep it the cost down, but it was an amazing experience. It's the first time I've
Well,
ever been to Toronto Pride.
well, I know about Stonewall before from P Flag and other organizations I in tune with, but when I saw your booth there, I was like, what the heck? What are you guys doing here?
Yeah,
I never expected that. I was like, that's great. That's why I started talking to you guys right away. I said, it's amazing. If
yeah.
you're in Toronto representing Stonewall, that's amazing. You know?
Yeah, well, being from Calgary and being from Alberta, like
Yeah,
living in Alberta, it's um I like the term that I always used to use, and it's like many flags, one community, right?
I
So
love
it's
that.
like we talk about it in the way as even with the acceptance into Stonewall, people they're like, well, what do you have to do? And I said, if you're brave enough to say you're part of the queer community and you're brave enough to say you need support and recovery with addiction,
Yeah,
we're gonna say welcome home,
it's amazing.
right? We're not gonna, there's no testing, there's no others. It's just like you tell us what you need. And another thing that is really unique with us is we'll work with everybody in every addiction. If you say you need this help, it doesn't matter whether you have drugs or alcohol or food in that space. We want to be able to support and journey with everybody.
It's amazing.
I mean, I was a process addiction person when I first started my recovery journey. Um, a gambling addiction wasn't even recognized as an addiction. It wasn't even recognized as a real problem. And a lot of people still said when I got recovery, what they used to say to people who had drug, why can't you just stop? You know,
Yeah,
why can't you just do this? It's just like without understanding the full dynamics, it was a lot of space. So if somebody wants to come into Stonewall for whatever part of the program, virtually or in bed when we're there and ready, and they have a gambling addiction, they have a food addiction, they have whatever, we're going to bring them home and say, welcome home. We're going to give them the supports that they need. And we're going to find experts in the field that'll support them in that space. Like the addiction side of it is very unique, but some of the stuff that goes on within certain addictions does bring a uniqueness to it. And I mean, look at our community has so many different aspects of that uniqueness that they're going to need support anyway.
how was your response to having your booth for the first time in Toronto? How was that?
It was amazing.
I mean, I
You
came down
know,
earlier. I saw you at the beginning. I had time to talk because there's nobody around. And then when I came back after the parade, I was like, it was like a lineup to your booth. That's great. You know?
it was we had so our goal for dealing and working with Toronto Pride, they have a lot of they are very much they have their stuff on lockdown and they have these rules and regulations. You want to be a part of it. This is what you have to do. So our goal when we went out there was to increase our social media following and increase our newsletter following. And we added 250 new people to those lists.
Great.
Um, was it like we had targets set up for everything, just did the fun stuff, but could we use a lot more in those spaces? Yes. What people don't understand is the more charities and not-for-profits have a following on social media, um, the more the corporations look at us as a reach. So if you want to do, if you don't have any money and you're looking a way to make a difference, follow queer charities online and make sure that you don't unfollow them. Like, and just stay with them if as long as they're doing good work and they're not, being harmful in what they're doing, then follow them. And when they go and look for grants and they look for, corporate donors and they look for that space, you know, a company's going to donate more to somebody that has 10,000 followers and has a reach nationally than they are going to donate to somebody who has 100 followers. It's part of the space is what are they going to get back for their dollar? So, so that was our goal. Our newsletter was really well received and people signed up directly for that. That was awesome. And yeah, so we're going to be, for me, it was a huge success. If we decide to come out next year for Toronto, because it was a lot of fun, we enjoyed it. We'll have our merch, we'll have a lot of things, we'll have a selling booth, and people will be able to take part in a lot more
I
ways.
hope you come back. I hope it's continuous. I know it's getting donations to get there and all. So then,
Yeah.
to ask you, but have you done a commercial like an ad like on your website or whatever?
We have a video that we did through sponsorship for we have a we I'll explain the gala in a minute. But if somebody wants to, and the link will be in the information here, it's called Stonewall Recovery Out of the Shadows, and it was a video. One of the biggest questions I get from the queer community is, what's the government doing for you when it comes to financial support? Uh, from the heterosexual community, one of the biggest questions I get is, why do they need their own? So this video was in response to that question: is why do they need their own, and um, what makes it unique in that space? So we talked to a local artist here, Sonia, and I gave her the vision of the song that I was hoping to use, but we couldn't afford to use because the artist's cost to get it was quite high.
Okay.
Um, and she wrote this beautiful song called Out of the Shadows. And if you listen to the lyrics, you're going to be blown away. And we worked with another videographer and every people and a whole bunch of, young queer actors were primarily our main space. I made an appearance because we had people who couldn't show up on the day of shooting. So myself and my board chair were in there and and my partner was in there. We just did some
You
space.
didn't ask for a close up, did you?
I tried not to, I am not a camera person usually, so um they make me feel very self-conscious.
Yeah,
So,
but you get kind of used to it. Yeah, like
yeah,
when I
well,
started.
hopefully I'm still not used to it yet. But so yeah, we've got that space and so Out of the Shadows, Stonewall Recovery, it's on YouTube. We can throw the link in the bio, I'm
Through the link in there.
assuming in
Yeah.
that space. Um and leave a comment, let me know what you think of the video because uh we're really proud, even though if you leave without tearing up, I'll be surprised because I've watched it probably 50 times and every time it still hits home, more so because the stories that we told in that video
Mhm.
I hear every day.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, oh, that's just so rare. No, our youth are still being kicked out as they come out. They come out to their family and they're being asked to leave their home. Our youth are still being targeted with violence. Our adults are our communities still being targeted with violence. Um, And unfortunately, the more marginalized people are, the intersectionality of marginalization within our community, there is other violence that they face. There's lateral violence that is happening. So there's a unique space, and we really have to do better. One of the beautiful sayings that I was given from a reporter out here is we owe a debt of gratitude to the original generation who came out and fought for our civil rights.
Yes. Yes.
We owe a debt of gratitude so great, but we also owe a debt of gratitude to the youth that are not settling. So one of the things that I see is I see a lot of people having their time in social media, which is the lateral violence that will cause trauma within our community. And I want to speak to just 1 second is like, who cares how many flags we have? Who cares how many letters we're using or numbers? All these people that are coming into the queer community that want to add something to their identity. Why aren't we need to be celebrating them just as much as we celebrated the original LGBT,
Hmm.
right? When we celebrated that, and now we have this space, and I hear a lot of people from within the community saying, well, we shouldn't be, and it's getting too big, and it's getting too this. I'm saying it's not big enough. As long as there's somebody out there who's unsure about their sexual identity, their gender identity, anything in that space that puts them into the thing and they feel that this is where they belong, we need to be saying welcome home. And when they're fighting for rights for themselves, we need to be standing beside them. In Alberta, there's policies being put in place that is taking away the rights of our trans family. So if we don't think that that's going to increase the level of addiction and the
Yes.
space and the violence that's going to be faced, which is just going to create more addiction, we're sorely mistaken.
Well, why are they passing these laws anyways? Like it's this, you know,
Um, because we're an easy target.
yeah.
So if you're going to go after votes and you're going to go after space and you're going to put policies in play, um, when you go after a group that's marginalized, it's good, but most of the time people don't stop there. They just continue to pass legislation. If somebody doesn't like something, they don't feel it, they'd rather not look into it. Their own phobias or fears or whatever, hatred, because it's not really a fear, but it's that space. Um, it's a tough space for people to be in, and they just target that space. So hopefully they have second sober thought and they realize what they're doing. You know, they don't consider those that are born intersex, and they will be caught up in this legislation. And um, we need our government to realize that gender affirming care is healthcare.
Steve, you want to go on the second part? I know you're limited for time. We'll cut in the next
But
half an hour. Do that?
sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
So just I want to continue. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about what you just said. So we'll just continue that. And let me see here. Oh, okay. They changed the whole Zoom thing. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, I'll end it now and I'll come back in 2 minutes there. Okay. Let me
Okay.
see here. I gotta find the okay, there we go. Okay. So I'll be back in 2 seconds. We'll continue on part two there. Okay. See?
Okay, we using the same channel, or do you want me to log
Yeah,
into the?
just hook up the link I sent you, just sign on the next one there. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, good. 2 seconds there. And